Welcome to Teddy's Nightmares, where the ordinary turns extraordinary and the unseen becomes seen. Tonight, we delve into a chilling collection of stories that will challenge the boundaries of reality and haunt your dreams. From a young daughter hearing a mysterious hello in an empty house to a toddler's eerie encounters with an invisible papa, each tale is steeped in the unexplainable. We'll explore the whispering shadows of a haunted residence, witness a child's terror at the sight of a spectral figure, and confront the darkest fears that lurk in the corners of our minds. So, turn down the lights, settle in, and prepare to be immersed in the spine-tingling world of Teddy's Nightmares. But before starting, subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell. Story 1. Someone said hello to my daughter. This event occurred merely 2 evenings prior. My abode is a dwelling shared across generations, occupied by myself, my spouse, his progenitors, and our offspring, a girl barely 2 years of age. The communal living areas are utilized by all, with the elders residing in bedrooms on the ground level, and myself, my spouse, and our daughter occupying a combined bedroom and office space on the upper level. 2 nights previously, at approximately 4:15 p.m., my spouse and his parents departed to partake in a musical performance. My daughter and I intended to accompany them, but were hindered due to a recent feverish ailment. Consequently, I settled her comfortably in a chair adjacent to my workspace in an effort to focus on my tasks. Around 4:30 p.m., I detected the indistinct utterance of a male from the stairwell below. The words were unintelligible. My initial thought was perhaps a return due to a forgotten item. However, their absence of assent led me to conclude they chose not to intrude and had departed once more. 5 minutes later, a distinct and deeper hello emanated from the same location. The lack of anyone's appearance prompted me to peer over the balcony. The area was deserted, and the lower level was silent. Returning to my desk, I resumed my activities. Soon after, the same voice pronounced my daughter's given name. She remained engrossed in her playthings, unresponsive. I revisited the stairwell, calling out a greeting, but received no reply. Resuming my seat, our activities continued. Unexpectedly, the voice articulated my daughter's middle name, seemingly closer, within our room. She glanced briefly towards the sound, then refocused on her toys. I messaged my husband, who fortuitously was en route home for a brief retrieval. Upon his arrival, we meticulously inspected the entire residence. Despite this, I was certain of our solitude, as this was not our inaugural encounter with peculiar occurrences here. Story 2. Toddler's mysterious encounters with Papa in recent weeks. Since my young children and I moved into our new home, my 2-year-old son has been exhibiting some peculiar behavior. He's developed an odd fixation with someone he refers to as Papa initially. I thought he was nostalgically referring to my father, whom he's always adored. However, things gradually became more unsettling. It began subtly, with my son engaging in one-sided conversations as if someone was there with him. He'd giggle, chat animatedly, and occasionally he would even close doors, bidding a cheery bye Papa as if he were seeing off an invisible visitor. At times, he'd grab my hand, trying to lead me to where he claimed Papa was. I tried to dismiss these actions as products of a toddler's active imagination. But then, one night, the situation took a more eerie turn. We were in bed, the room dimly lit by a nightlight casting long shadows across the walls. I feigned sleep, hoping my son would drift off too. But instead, he lay there, whispering into the semi-darkness. "Mama, look, Papa," he'd say, his little finger pointing towards the empty space beside our bed. "Papa's sleepy," he murmured, a note of concern in his voice that didn't match his years. The next morning, his behavior became more disconcerting. He wandered the house with a solemn expression, repeatedly muttering, "Papa sad, Mama "And Papa's sleepy." His words sent chills down my spine, transforming the once warm atmosphere of our home into something more ominous. His attachment to this unseen Papa seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. He'd leave toys out, insisting they were for Papa to play with, or refuse to eat certain snacks, claiming they were Papa's favorite. Even more disturbing was the night when I heard him giggling in his room well past his bedtime. Creeping to his door, I overheard him in a hushed, earnest conversation. "Papa, you're so funny," he giggled. But what froze me in my tracks was hearing a low, unidentifiable murmur in response, a sound that certainly didn't come from my little boy. The house, an old Victorian-style property with creaky floorboards and drafty windows, seemed to take on a life of its own. Shadows loomed larger, and the night seemed to whisper secrets I wasn't privy to. Each creak and groan of the house made me jump, my mind racing with thoughts of who or what my son was interacting with. As I lie awake each night, listening to the sounds of the house and the soft murmur of my son's conversations with his invisible Papa, I can't help but wonder, is this just the overactive imagination of a child, or is there something more, something unseen, living among us in this new home? The thought makes me shudder, and I pull my son closer, hoping to keep him safe from whatever might be lurking in the shadows. Story 3. A mysterious whistle. Inhabiting a residence with an obscure past, the only known detail is the discovery of a pelvic bone and old magazines hidden in the bathroom wall by my parents upon their arrival. Throughout my upbringing, I've consistently encountered a specter, a woman with dark, lengthy hair and a ghostly complexion, standing about 5 feet 6 inches. Her presence is familiar in the corridor, lingering in my former bedroom, and such. My mother has noticed her too, often mistaking her for me, as we bear a striking resemblance. She's recounted instances of seeing the ghost perched on the edge of my bed at night or catching glimpses of her from the corner of her eye. This phenomenon has persisted for 15 years since our initial move. The spirit has become a normal part of life, though her appearances have dwindled. However, a recent development has unsettled me. Over the past fortnight, whistling has punctuated the night, commencing between 2:30 and 3 a.m. The initial occurrence was as I lay in bed, engrossed in my phone, when the whistling erupted. It bore the sound of a man whistling just outside. Our house is flanked by a single neighbor, with the other side bordering a stretch of undeveloped land, a mixture of soil and shrubbery. Positioned at the house's front, my room offers a view of a field. Mustering courage, I peered out the window the first night, only to find an eerie silence and no sign of anyone. The whistling ceased but soon resumed, seemingly nearer. Each night, the pattern repeats at the same time, but I refrain from looking out, feeling an instinctual warning against it. The previous night, however, marked a change. Anticipating the usual whistling, a startling bang on the roof occurred, followed by the sound of footsteps. This lasted briefly, yet just as it seemed to end, footsteps resonated outside my window. I lay paralyzed, engulfed by a malevolent aura. Then, my dog entered, fixing her gaze on the window. Normally vocal and inquisitive, her expression and unusual quietness heightened my fear. She climbed into bed, seeking comfort. Today, she's been notably subdued and avoids the window. I'm at a loss regarding the nature and intent of these occurrences. Being sensitive to energies and presences, perhaps this explains my exclusive experience of these events in our home. But I am resolute in my desire to understand and eradicate this presence. Story 4. To provide some context, we reside in a compact mobile home measuring 12 by 30, featuring a combined sitting room and kitchen, with bedrooms partitioned by a hallway door. Our household includes a 3-year-old and a 3-month-old. Currently, we alternate sleeping on the living room couch with the infant in a nearby cot, as the baby's room is under renovation while our 3-year-old co-sleeps with us in the main bedroom. Last evening, during my assigned night shift, it's a regular occurrence for my 3-year-old to wake up and seek me, particularly on nights I'm on duty. However, last night, at precisely 2:50 a.m., I was startled by his frantic crying as he dashed to me, closely followed by my partner. The room was dimly lit, and I could barely make out my partner's silhouette in the doorway, donned in an orange shirt. Although it was too dark to discern his facial features, with only the faint glow from the LEDs of our TV offering some light, the TV, situated about 5 feet away, is placed behind a partition featuring a small, arch-shaped opening at the top and angled away from the doorway. I settled my son next to me on the couch, and as I sat up, I gazed towards my partner. I expressed my silent disapproval through a shake of my head, puzzled by our son's sudden appearance. My partner, however, remained unresponsive. I sat there, baffled, wondering why he just stood there, motionless, watching me. Subsequently, he took a step back, turned sideways behind the door, and leaned forward, peering in. I was still trying to comprehend his bizarre behavior, either come inside or go back to bed, I thought amusingly. Then, about 3 minutes later, a startling realization dawned on me. My partner had gone to bed wearing a black t-shirt, not an orange one. This person, standing there in an orange shirt, wasn't him. Alarmed, I leapt up to shut the door, but as I neared it, the figure vanished into thin air. When my partner woke up for work at 6 a.m., he mentioned he had no knowledge of our son waking up that night, and he was still wearing his black shirt. In our mobile home, every movement is noticeable, especially my partner's, as he's not light-footed. But in this instance, there was complete silence, no footsteps at all, only the sound of my little boy rushing to me. So, whether it was a spirit or something else, it definitely frightened me to the core. I'm curious to see if it will happen again. Story 5. My childhood fear is real. In my younger years, a haunting fear was confirmed to be genuine. Sharing tales from my childhood residence, this narrative is foremost among them. The house where I was raised, belonging to my mother, was perpetually engulfed in paranormal activity. Continuous loud footfalls echoed day and night, and on occasion, more chilling occurrences like disembodied voices transpired. This supernatural phenomenon wasn't solely my experience. My parents, partner, and even acquaintances have all encountered bizarre occurrences. Yet, one specific aspect instilled the greatest terror in me. Each night, as I lay in bed, an overwhelming, palpitation-inducing dread would seize me, leading me to dismiss these sensations as silly fears of darkness. But I was almost certain I saw a young girl lurking in my room shadows, often beneath my bed. With her dark locks, pallid complexion, and large, black eyes, she was a haunting presence. Hiding under my covers, barely breathing through a small gap, I would lay frozen in terror until either a frantic dash to my mother's room or succumbing to sleep in my own bed occurred. I pondered whether her presence was real or merely a figment of my imagination, amplified by the eerie nature of our house. I suspected this because I was the only one who ever witnessed her. As years passed, these nightly encounters persisted. The girl, who only ever stared, seemed to terrorize me. My bed was adjacent to a mirror cupboard, allowing me to see her lying there, just inches away, a memory that still sends shivers down my spine. The situation worsened over time. Strangely, she always appeared to be my age. As I grew, so did she. By age 15, I hardly ever slept alone at my mother's house, preferring the company of friends or staying with my father. Eventually, I dismissed the girl as imaginary, rationalizing her absence despite other ghosts being seen in the house. Additionally, my childhood fear of darkness likely played a role. Gradually, I resumed sleeping alone in my room, though a lingering eerie sensation persisted, typical of my mother's house. I resolved never to glance into that mirror at night again. Now in my early 20s, with a life of my own in a non-haunted place, the story doesn't end. My mother, who regularly calls me in the mornings, sounded unusual one day. She relayed an eerie incident involving Steve, her boyfriend, a skeptic of ghosts despite obvious nocturnal disturbances. One evening, while watching TV, the footsteps in the house were extraordinarily loud. Steve, unnerved, suggested someone was upstairs, to which my mother responded lightheartedly about the reality of ghosts. Later, Steve, alone downstairs, was disturbed by the noises and decided to head to bed, turning off the lights. What followed was truly horrifying. In the darkened living room, Steve noticed a shape advancing towards him. He hastened up the stairs, with the figure, the girl, trailing a few meters behind, all the way to my mother's bedroom. In a panic, he closed the door behind him, seeking refuge in the bed, much like I did as a child. Once Steve reached the safety of the bed, the door creaked open and the girl peeked in, staring intently at them for a prolonged moment before retreating and closing the door. I asked my mother about the girl's age. Her response, based on Steve's observation, indicated she appeared to be in her early 20s. At this revelation, a wave of dread washed over me, and I realized with a whisper, she is real. The sinister aura surrounding this ghost deeply unsettles me, contrasting with the other, less malevolent spirits at my mother's house. Story 6. Most frightening encounter of my life. To set the stage, this event unfolded roughly a decade ago. I've confided this tale in only a select few. Many dismiss it as mere exaggeration. This experience, deeply unsettling as it was, shifted my perspective from dismissive skepticism to a cautious belief. Background context. At 22, a sophomore at university, abstaining from alcohol and drugs, I resided in Stoke, UK. I shared an aged terrace dwelling with my girlfriend and several friends during my second year. The house had an eerie ambience, limited to front and back windows only. Its gloomy, musty basement was cluttered with antiquated furniture, and nightly, a black cat appeared at our rear door, which I befriended and cared for. The residence's foreboding nature was further accentuated by the dark, muddy dead-end street serving as a communal area and parking space. Despite this, having been raised in an early 19th century house, these elements didn't overly unsettle me. However, I later found out that my downstairs neighbor and his partner were troubled by nocturnal footsteps in the corridor and living room, with no one in sight upon investigation. Moreover, I learned later that the previous year's occupants were convinced the house was haunted and were relieved to leave. The core incident. My academic term extended for weeks beyond my housemates due to a clinical placement, leaving me alone in the large house, which I initially relished as an introvert. The first fortnight was enjoyable, despite the underlying spookiness, which I rationalized away. But beyond this point, an inexplicable, unnerving dread began to manifest, unattributable to any identifiable cause. As someone who isn't prone to anxiety and enjoys solitude, this was unusual. A feeling of being watched, akin to a hunted creature, started to pervade my senses. This fear escalated to the point where I would walk 3 miles to campus, choosing to spend my time in the library, whether on placement or not. Even during daylight, the house induced fear. I developed a system to navigate it without ever being in darkness, applicable even in daylight in windowless areas. I eventually relocated to a smaller room, locking the door and sleeping against a wall, often with the light on, gripped by an unexplainable terror. On my final day, I had to secure the house, fetch items from the basement, and lock up, moving as if in slow motion, engulfed in fear. Ensuring a lit path at all times, I had pre-positioned my belongings, a backpack and duffel bag, the rest already in my car, near the front door. The unnerving climax. It was a bright late afternoon outside, but the house's interior was shadowy. Bracing myself, I switched off the hallway light, situated 4 meters from the front door. The upstairs was pitch dark, normal due to closed doors and absence of windows. As I switched off the light and moved towards the door, my neck hairs stood on end. An overwhelming sensation of dread washed over me. I perceived a malevolent, dark, shadow-like presence descending the stairs towards me. In a near panic, I retreated backwards into the street, into daylight, where everything suddenly felt normal again. I locked the door, dropped the key in the mail slot, and never returned to that house. The only comparison for this sensation is a blend of a dementor and ringwraith encounter, though not visually manifested. The fear and dread were beyond words, a unique experience in my life. I've never had mental health issues, was content and stress-free at the time, and even now, recounting this feels both surreal and embarrassing. Story 7. You're Not Mom. This occurrence transpired a few nights prior. I am an individual frequently plagued by illness. Habitually, I am burdened with either a cold or a fever, which often inflicts severe body aches and disrupts my sleep. Hence, when I awoke around 2 a.m., tormented by significant body pain, it didn't strike me as odd. It's crucial to mention that my exhaustion was profound upon awakening, and my chamber was shrouded in darkness. Propped up in my bed, I was besieged by relentless pain in my limbs and torso. Sleep seemed unattainable amidst such discomfort. At that moment, my mother made her entrance into the room. In retrospect, this was peculiar, but at the time, I surmised my restlessness had roused her. The obscurity of the room and my drowsy state obscured her features, yet her behavior seemed unremarkable. Inquiring about my ailment, I conveyed my sleeplessness and physical agony. She proposed paracetamol, to which I agreed. She then departed my room, and through my haze, I observed lights flickering on, a routine occurrence, as the medicine box was downstairs. She reappeared shortly, and I distinctly recollect ingesting the liquid from the measuring cup she provided, followed by water from a bottle she handed me. My memory thereafter is hazy, but she departed, and I succumbed to sleep. The following day, my mother was casually watching television, yet she didn't inquire about my well-being, which was uncharacteristic. I mentioned the drowsiness from the paracetamol's side effects. Perplexed, she questioned my consumption of the medicine. Confounded, I responded, "You administered it last night?" She persistently refutes having entered my room that night. I tend to believe her, as she has never engaged in such pranks, particularly involving medication. Moreover, she cherishes her sleep and wouldn't disrupt it for a trivial joke. I remain uncertain if the figure I saw that night was truly my mother. And with that, we conclude tonight's journey through the shadowy corridors of Teddy's nightmares. Each story we've shared tonight blurs the lines between the known and the unknown, reminding us that sometimes the most chilling tales are those that lurk just beyond the edge of our perception. But before we part ways, we have a question for you, our brave and curious viewers. Have you ever experienced something inexplicable, a moment where reality seemed to fray at the edges? We invite you to share your own eerie encounters in the comments below. Your story might just become the centerpiece of our next episode. That's the end of our episode for today. If you enjoyed these stories and want more, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and activate the notification bell. We'll see you in the next video.